This conference will now be recorded.
No.
I'm not saying. $6:00.
The July 26th council meeting be called to order. Would you please stand for the pledge of allegiance and all the silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item on the agenda, we consider approval of the consent agenda items, minutes from the July the 12th meeting, and statement of bills paid in the amount of $304,140.81.
I move to approve the items on the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and second to approve the agenda, the consent agenda. With the clerk, please call roll.
Shriver,
Yes.
Stites.
Yes.
Cahar.
Yes.
Next item on the agenda, will be any requests or comments from the public. Okay, would you please approach that and give us your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Only 3 minutes?
Yes, sir.
Well, I got a lot of stuff on my mind about what goes on here and how it goes on. I'm Major Brooks Jr. at 407 North South 110th Street, where you got the road all tore up for a year. I'm not from European, and stop signs was working good, and you put in a European turnaround. I don't know how much that costs, but you go up Edwardsville Drive, and when it rains, you need a boat. All the water comes down the hill. There's no drains up there, no sewer drains, no storm drains whatsoever. And you go and waste taxpayers' money. I don't mean it that you do it publicly or intentionally. You do it because your job is to make sure roads are taken care of. Well, the water washes out whatever you put there, because water is stronger than we are. And the force of that, I would like to see that some storm drains be put in. I don't know whether storm drains are part of infrastructure, that the money comes down from Washington to Topeka to here, how that system works. But I know I've been in this community probably 10, 12 years now, and there's a outhouse in everybody's backyard on 110th Street. And I would like to see something towards that, sewer drains, storm drains, connection from Riverview that you're got already in your sites and your planning. I don't know what it costs for a planner to come in and plan all that, but only thing I've seen since I've been up there is trees being cut back for the lines, tree lines, the lines, that keep the storm from the trees that tearing up the lines. I would like to submit, a resolution to this outhouse in everybody's backyard. Just down the street here, everybody's living comfortable with sewer and storm drain. I would like to see that added to the list, oncoming projects. I hear that it was my idea not to have it. I get on the internet and I see this meeting is being on the internet, and I listened to the guy that ran in the pothole and put a hole in his oil pan.
Sir, your time's up.
Okay, okay.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Mayor, if I might,
Sure.
Mr. Brooks, I'd be happy, at the time to meet with you, go over kind of what the plans are with the storm sewer and some of those things. Find some time and do that. So appreciate it, just so you know. Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda, we consider staff update related to property located at 9711 Steel Road and take on any necessary action.
You got it.
Mayor and members of council, if you'll remember, the city council, I should say the governing body, passed a resolution related to the property at 9711 Steel Road, setting a date for abatement or demo of the property out there. That deadline was July 31st. In that process, as the city manager had updated you all, that property was put up for tax sale and was since purchased by somebody else. We've been in contact with the new property owner, and as we understand it, he's wanting to actually rehab the structure and use it as residential property for his family. So at this point, what we're asking, or at least we're proposing for the council, is because the resolution that we already adopted placed the deadline for July 31st for abatement of those conditions. What we have in the packet is a updated resolution that essentially pushes that deadline out a month and gives that individual time to gather all the permit materials that he needs, submit those for review and approval from the city. So essentially gives him another 30 days to get his documents in order to submit a complete building permit. And if he's got that submitted, and then at that point, there's really no need for any more of the monitoring of the conditions. It'll be handled through the building permit and inspection process, like any other build project would go. We let the property owner know about this evening's meeting, and I don't believe he's on the call. I don't see him in the audience tonight, but he was aware of kind of the status of where the property was at as far as the action this body's already taken. So in short, what the staff proposal is to adopt the resolution in the packet, which I believe is resolution 2021-11, which gives,
11 or 12?
is it 12, and then giving the property owner an additional 30 days to submit permit materials, whether that be a build permit, or if he gets far enough into it and says, you know what, I just want to demo and start from scratch, it gives him that 30 days to do that. He seems to be working in good faith towards it, so we want to give him a little bit more time, considering where he landed in purchasing the property while this body was doing its review of it.
What was the date it was purchased?
Oh, it might have been purchased actually prior to the public hearing.
Yeah, right. A week of the public hearing.
So that was a few weeks ago.
Right,
Yes.
yeah, about.
What was the price?
I'm not
I
sure.
don't know. I mean, they have to, when you buy from the tax sale, you have to pay all
Back to-
taxes.
right.
Penalties, right? So whatever that minimum was what it required. I know there's another property near there, and it's on for like around 5,000, but it's all dependent upon how long they, how much back taxes there were. So
My question is, do they need 30 days to do this?
I think from the conversations that we have had with the property owner, he seems to have a little bit of difficulty in getting some of the contractors identified to do. I think he's just trying to get his whole head around the entirety of the project. And if you remember, the property is and needs some significant repairs. So I think he's wanting some time to identify some contractors, do a little bit of shopping around to get the best, most affordable option for him. So I think 30 days is probably, I think 30 days is a fair amount of time for him to do that, considering he seems to be working at
I hope
it.
so, because this alleviates a lot for us as a city.
Right.
So
And it had been in poor condition for at least the amount of
Right,
time.
right.
So I think part of our thinking is if 30 days gets it moving forward and
Takes the
scope
burden off of
things,
us.
that's not that much time. Just because of council meetings, just how things fall. So we felt like that 30 days would give him all that. We know that he has reached out to get
August
estimates, demolitions, and he's come in and got building permit material, the materials and things. So it's not as if he just about it and nobody's heard from him. So it has been interactive.
So best case scenario, the property owner gets his building permit materials in within that time frame, and we don't have to keep updating the council as to the progress of it unless you ask specifically about the status of that building permit. If he doesn't, then we'll come back at that first meeting in September and just give you an update, and then we might have some different suggestions on as far as how to carry forward.
So will it be on our plate on the 27th? Is that the date that it comes back?
August 27th.
No,
So August 31st would be the deadline, which is, so the next meeting after that, so whatever the first meeting, August 31st is his deadline we pushed out, gave him an additional 30 days. Our meeting is on the August 23rd. We would get an update. We would update this body at the first meeting in September as to whether or not he got his building permit materials in and if it was ready to go or not.
And I think it would be our intent as well to also have, if nothing's occurring by that time, that we would have bids or estimates for the demolition and potentially bring that to the council on that same evening, if there's no action. I mean, if he's moving forward and there's action, but if there's no action, to be able to prepare to move it forward and go forward.
So he would technically have until about September 6th before we would
Make an additional,
make anything different. So
Right.
it's about 6 weeks instead of 4 weeks. Right.
from, I mean, so until there's an action from this body, it'd be about 6 weeks. His deadline to get those materials in is that 31st date.
Technically, after he goes past August 31st, he would be, if he doesn't take any action by then, technically at that point, he's in violation.
Yeah, but I mean, technically, if he comes back in on September 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and says, hey, I'm ready to get my building permit, that being in violation didn't mean anything. We would go ahead and move forward with him being able to do whatever he wanted to do,
Yeah.
right?
If that's the direction of the
So-
council, yeah.
So we could be out there on September 1st demoing the building. I'm not saying that.
I wish he would have taken and I understand that he's just recently purchased it and needs to get his ducks in a row on which direction he's going. I wish that he would have been here tonight so that we could talk. I wish he had taken advantage of that opportunity. But, I mean, we know that we're probably not going to allow it a second time.
Right.
It'd be so with that being said, I'm willing to make the motion that we adopt resolution 2021-12, giving the new property owner at 9711 Steel Road an additional month to submit building permits materials.
Second.
It has been moved in second to adopt resolution 2021-12. Would the clerk please call roll?
Shriver,
Yes.
Stites.
Yes.
Cahar.
Yes.
If I might I just have one thing to add. He does have the option to either come in and get a permit to remodel or come in and get a demolition. So he had both options. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, consider recommendation of approval from the planning commission regarding a replat, final plat for 1857 South 105th Terrace. That would be 2021-02. What's that PT stand for?
Final plat.
Final plan. Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. The item before you is a replat of an existing lot within the Williamson Farm subdivision. The approval of this plat will not result in any changes dimensionally to the previously approved lot, nor hinder future access to any existing infrastructure. The item was presented to the Planning Commission and approved unanimously with staff recommendations on July 21st, 2021. Staff supports the recommendation for approval with the two conditions included within the staff report and acceptance of the revised easements, dedicated public rights of way. With that, I'll open it up for any questions you may have.
Why are you wanting to rezone it?
We're not rezoning this, we're just adjusting the our front setback lines.
I'm
and-
sorry. Yeah, that's
That's okay.
adjusting the plat. Why is that?
He wanted to open up some buildable area in the northeast corner of his lot, and this would allow for that to happen. Basically, when they platted this back in 1995, before our current zoning ordinance, they had that setback at 30 because that was the minimum at the time. Today it's 25. And as far as the utility easements in the northeast corner, I think that was more, they didn't have that infrastructure in place, and so they put that in just for to be cautious. And
So would that be in the corner of his front yard he's wanting to build something?
rear yard, he's been told.
Wouldn't that be southeast?
Well, it's a side, it is considered his kind of side yard area.
Mhm.
But yeah, so what happened is he has his house there and they put in basically a large blanket easement for utility and drainage and just covered that whole area. But there's a fairly large space where he could build a detached garage, which is what he wants to do. But to do that, the whole area was easements. And so obviously you can't build over the easements. But they went out and located the sewer lines to verify they're dedicating 15 feet of easement for the sewer line that's existing and 5 feet on the property for drainage easement. There's an additional 15 feet on the next lot over. And so all of our infrastructure is still within those easements and none of the other utilities have infrastructure in the existing drainage and utility.
And there's no HOA rules, regulations against building a detached?
So it's in full compliance with our subdivision ordinances. So
Good.
typically in plats are somewhat of an administrative, so do they meet all of our requirements for platting? It does, dedicating the easements, and it's been reviewed by the county surveyor, the county engineers, all the utilities, as well as our city engineer.
If somebody's wanting to improve their property, I think that's fantastic.
Right.
And if I'm not mistaken, you need two different resolutions, right? A replat.
All we're doing
resolution.
is a replat.
Oh, and you don't, not final?
Well, it is a final plat, yeah, but I think
It's
we
a
just need one action.
replat and final plat.
Right, so you
Yeah,
need two
it's a
different.
single action though.
It is a single action?
Because it already has an existing preliminary plat, so a lot of times we do preliminary and final. Basically, the existing plat serves as the preliminary, so it's just, we're accepting the plat and you're accepting the dedication of easements, which technically are already there. But that's what we do.
Okay, I make a motion to approve the planning commission approval regarding the final plat of Williamson Farms Reserve Lot 14, acceptance of dedicated public rights of way and easements, including 2 conditions?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Second?
It has been moved and second to approve the replat, final plat for 1857 South 105th Terrace, 2021-02 FPT. Could the clerk please call roll?
Shriver,
Yes.
Stites,
Yes.
Kahar,
Yes.
McTaggart.
Next item on the agenda will be consider a motion to recess into executive session pursuant to KSA 75-4319B2 for consultation with legal counsel for matters which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship for discussions related to a project in the city's industrial park.
I think 20 minutes or 6:40.
It's 20 after, so you're saying
20 minutes.
6:40. Need a motion second.
I move to go to recess for an executive session pursuant to KSA 75-4319B2 until 6:40.
Second.
Been moved and second to go into executive session until 6:40. Would the clerk please call roll?
Shriver,
Yes.
Stites.
Yes.
Kahar.
Yes.
This conference will now be recorded.
It'd be good to know, you know, just keep up with all of them. Email, CNN.
Mhm.
Cigar. Okay, need a motion and a second to return to regular session.
Move to, oh,
Go ahead, Jerry,
sorry.
you got it.
Return to regular session, 6:41 PM.
Second.
It has been moved in second to return to regular session. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Shriver,
Yes.
Stites,
Yes.
Cahar.
Yes.
Next item on the agenda is your staff presentation regarding the development of 2022 annual budget, focusing on proposed general fund expenditure.
Am I ready to go there? Okay. And am I using? Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is part of our ongoing process for setting the budget. I would like just here at the beginning to thank Zach, especially for putting all this together and kind of being our hub of our big wheel. A lot of work by Sean Middleton, our finance director, and kind of getting numbers together and getting all that. And then especially our department heads for, you know, their work, not just one day out of the year, but all year to manage the budgets and be thinking about what we need in the future. So, and this is going to be pretty high level at this point. I may call on Zach a few times because some of the stuff he probably has more in his head than I have at this point. But we will try to keep this moving and answer questions as we go. So obviously we're into the 2022 budget. Haven't finished 2021, but we're already on to the next one. So as you recall, at the very last meeting, I made it pretty clear what was going to be our priorities. And number one was roads. And I think you'll see that we are investing quite a bit for roads. Number two was remembering employee compensation. We've gone through the compensation plan. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Staffing in general, making sure we have the right staff in the right places so we can make sure to provide the service to the citizens. Capital improvements, and that's kind of a broad category at this point. Just some of the things we mainly were focusing on: reinvestment into existing facilities, what we need to do there. And then obviously not last, but roads. So again, as we said last time, we know that this is a high priority and we'll continue to work on those areas. So we're going to start with roads being the first area. So we have a number of funding sources around roads. So when we say roads, it's everything from, hey, there's a pothole and we just need to go fix the small pothole, to we're going to do, you know, some pretty big capital improvements to a street. It does not include what we're doing when we use our large bonded projects that generally are matched up with federal highway funding. So the 110th Streets or the 98th Streets or the Kansas Avenues, that's not really included in the annual budget. Those are generally included as part of the debt service and those things. So the way we get to our budget is we have about $50,000 in public works for road maintenance. That also includes salt for salt removal, general maintenance. Again, right? We need to fix something small in the road. It may be a pipe. It may be things like that. These are not big projects, but they may be a combination of $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 types of projects. The second area that we have used, it was specifically set up, was the special sales tax. As you recall, when we adopted that, I think it was in 2014, that we said there's three areas. One was in predominantly capital within the fire department. That's how we've been able to acquire equipment that we've had. Second area was around roads and road maintenance. And the third area is around parks. And so we have used funding out of that special sales tax for those three purposes, which are specifically outlined in the vote that was put out there. So we can't use those dollars for just anything. They're specific. The second area, which will be a pretty big change this year, we're proposing moving or using $245,000 out of the special highway fund. The special highway fund is highway taxes, gas taxes. Two things that'll go on here, and you'll see a little bit more. Number one is instead of moving money from here to pay for debt service, we want to leave it here. And because we've had some delay, we have some extra funding in this area that we haven't spent in the prior year. Some of that because of the 2020 with COVID and some of those things where things got delayed. So we'll spend more than we bring into this fund in the 2022 year, but we still have proper balances.
Where was that money going before? Like last year, where did the special highway funds?
It gets used on on any road kind of project, but 125,000 of it was going directly to debt service.
Okay.
So our recommendation will be not to move any to debt service and to use our mill levy to pay for that, right? And you'll see that in just a second. And then as you recall in 2019, part of our bond program included about $640,000 for storm water improvements and road improvements. We were doing a storm inventory, so we went out and surveyed all our cross pipes, all our inlet boxes, all those types of things. We somewhat assumed we were going to have more bad pipe, so we thought more of the pipe would have to be replaced than actually has needed to be done. But in that bond covenant, it said we could spend it on roads and storm on certain roads, right? So we can't spend it on any road, but we can spend it on the 102nds or the 98s or the Richlands or what you would call your major roads, our collector roads for the most part. So, yes, sir.
Would that apply to what Mr. Davis was talking about on 110th? Is that a collector road?
Yeah, that's actually an arterial road. Yes, it could be used for sure.
Okay.
Now, we do have stormwater in that new section.
Okay.
It does have underground stormwater built into that project, but yes, it could be. So I'm going to go back if I can. Does it let me go back there? So if you look at that, right, all in all, we're pushing $600,000 in roads. We've been typically budgeting around 150,000 in roads. So, we're looking at anywhere around 3 times more money than we have been putting into roads in the 2022 budget. So significant increase in our road budget. Again, this is in addition to what's already out there, the 110th Street project and what's already being done on the 98th Street project, through the federal funding. So this is not in lieu of, it's in addition to.
So I know that, I guess.
Go ahead. No, please.
Before we go into that, so I know that it shouldn't be any problem spending that amount of money on roads. And I know how our staffing levels are in that area. Is that, and I know that that's one of your bullet points is staffing.
Right.
And I mean, you have to have people to be able to do that work.
Sure.
Is some of this work potentially going to be contracted out?
Probably almost all of that's going to be contracted out. Now, if it's again, a crossroad pipe replacement, a single crossroad pipe replacement where we've got a failure, it's a small one, not like what we had on Riverview. I mean, our staff has done that. We've done patches that are, 10 by 10 kind of patches. So small patches, right of way mowings or fixing, sign replacement stuff. But most of the big projects would be contracted. So what we're doing this year around the seal project, we're finalizing bids for 102nd Street where they're full depth repairs, right? So those will be dug down or milled down 8 to 12 inches, new base brought in, new asphalt brought in, and ultimately an overlay over the top. that's all gonna be contracted. And it's not just people, it's equipment, I mean, paving boxes and all that. We just, we don't have the staff or the things. And typically that's how it's done. It's gonna be contracted work, So on employee compensation, so again, we approved a compensation plan. We broadened it to 13 steps. We're not making any changes to that basically. But we had a few positions, as you know, where we were going, okay, so how do we align some people? And basically, again, we're going to keep the compensation plan. People will move 3%. That, so our typical step of progression of 3%, we're building that into the plan, at least for the budget. And then realignment of key positions. There was really 2 areas of key positions that came up when we started looking at compensation and trying to compare it to the other areas. And you would probably know these. Police officer, and by police officer we mean your entry-level police officer. So not necessarily the upper staff, but your police officers, the ones that are out on the street day in and day out. And what we are referring to as master firefighter, or currently they're called driver operators. So we're trying to align some of our positions similar. So in the police department, right, we have police officer, we have master police officer, and then we have sergeant, and so on. And in the fire department, very similar. We have firefighters. Some firefighters are EMTs, some firefighters are paramedics, and they get compensated by having a paramedic. The master firefighter or firefighter engineer, kind of still working on just title, but that's generally the people that are on the fire truck driving it. If they're on a fire scene, they're the ones running the pumps. They have to have a higher level of knowledge and education, right? So those 2 areas effectively were moving up in the pay plan. So, example, police officers at a G, they will go to an H. On the master firefighters, we're going to go two grades up. So they go from, I think, G to I, or I think that's a G, 2 steps up to I. Part of that is because we have, in the past, we've given them a stipend. So we'll give them so much money to be ready to be a captain or ready to be a driver. We've kind of eliminated those. Some of it has to do, quite honestly, with IRS regulations and taxations and how do you calculate that into pay rates and overtime rates. But by doing that, we just have to go up those 2 grades so that they not only get compensated at the market rate, but also to make up for something. We're taking something away and adding something to it. So to keep that there, we'll go up 2 grades on those 2. Everybody else is staying in this pay plan where they're at in the pay plan. They will get step increases, but they won't go up in grade. So these are the only 2 positions that we've done. Obviously, police officers, we fund, I believe 9 or 12. The number of police officers, 12, 9. Okay, 9. And then on the master firefighters, it's 3. So 12 people are affected by this in that way. Again, I've already hit it, kind of using annual pay adjustments, 3%, kind of across the board. So staffing, we have 2 recommendations around staffing. As we look and trying to make sure we're providing the services that we need to provide and taking care of the things. And we've talked about this from a staff level. We really see two areas, and also contracted work. I think Ms. Shriver brought that up. Are there things we can do better with contracting work? And we really think there are. And so we're putting more money towards that. Again, lawn maintenance services, right? Like mowing around the community center or around here, or things that are more routine. It's hard to go contract out, right-of-way tree clearing is a little bit harder to do sometimes, or there's just some jobs that just hard to do that with. So we are looking at contracted work as well. So the first position is to add an officer in the police department. So we have full staffing of 4 people every shift and have a detective in the office. We keep having to pull people out of detectives and put them on the street. Well, when you do that, then who's running, who's solving crime, who's doing all the stuff around doing detective work? So we've not had that dedicated person in there. So This gives us that ability to have a dedicated detective solving crime day in and day out, and we don't have that right now. And then the second position would be, well, we talk about contracts. So the second position would be a part-time person here in what we would call administration, primarily around the court, for the court clerk, especially court days. I mean, right, we have hundreds show up for court, but it's not just the court day. It's before court day, everybody wants to either come in and pay or ask for extensions, or after court day, all the paperwork has to be done, all the people have to be done. It gets really time consuming. Utility billing, right? We only bill once every other month, but when you do that utility billing, you got a massive work in a short period of time. So we feel that a part-time person would help across the board, being here on a consistent basis, whether it's handle court, which is the primary, handle utility billing, handle other administrative, accounts payable, all those types of things.
And who does that right now?
For what, court?
The additional part-time, who's doing those jobs right now? Is that,
Well, we work
would be-
with the court clerk works overtime. The police clerk ends up filling in for the court. Zach does utility billings, or Sean. So I mean, we're
It's a little
using
bit of
people,
everyone.
then they're not able to do the things they need to do. And it kind of
But
goes back to the
This
police.
is an addition to a full-time office administrator?
Yes, which is a funded position. So these are both new positions. So again, I think from the police department, I mean, you can go do lots of studies. We know we're understaffed. I mean, we
Have we ever had a full-time detective?
we have the position, but we've never had necessarily somebody that's always there that we don't pull off and put out on the street. So we have a position. We actually do two, try to have two in there. But like today, our captain was working the streets. We didn't have a detective. I mean, so it's just been this ongoing staffing. If we look at staffing studies, we should probably be closer to having 15 to 18 people. We're not asking for that, but we have a number of days where, our minimum staffing is always 2, right? That's our minimum staffing on the street.
do you mean, so patrol? To
For patrol, right. On the street patrol, no less than 2. We have, and the chief's gone through some of we have a lot of shifts where we only have one person dedicated. So what do we have to do? We have to pull people back in on overtime, or we have to fill that spot with, pull the detective out, pull the lieutenant out. So we're taking people out of that piece of solving crime and dealing with the district courts, or, preparing affidavits and warrants, and we're putting them out on the street, right? Because that's the first line, but all that stuff has to be followed up with and finished and done and work. And so that's what happens. We keep pulling people out of those places to put them on the streets because we don't have the staffing on the street to keep 2 on.
So would this new position be a position on the street or detective? Or is it a patrol position? Since you said we need more on the street.
Well, what it does is take us from 11 on the street to 12. So it put 12 on the street, where right now we have 11. That then lets the detective stay in the detective areas.
So 4 per shift.
Yeah, we've scheduled 4 per shift. That's our standard shift, right? But obviously you don't have 4 every day because, they're off, people are off the shift because they're on just their days off, vacation, sick leave, court, whatever the other things are. And so again, our goal is to have as many possible days covered with 2 people without having to go into overtime or pull them out of other divisions. That's really the
When
critical.
you said that studies show that we're understaffed, what
Yeah.
does it show that we should be at?
18 on the
18
street.
for the entire department?
Street.
And what do we have in the entire department?
17
And how
full-time.
many of those are patrolmen?
11.
So there's 6. And
Well, so the staffing model is chief, deputy chief, lieutenant, K9.
but K9's a patrolman.
Sure, but they're not, again, they're not working a standard shift. They're generally in a power shift. So if I'm trying to fill 6 to 2, 2 to 10, 10 to 6, they're not necessarily always assigned to that shift. Right? They're working different shifts. Obviously, as you brought past, I mean, one day a week they're in training. I mean, I mean, we knew that going in. So we still have to fill those spots.
So give me that breakdown again.
If you want to,
On
Chief,
them.
you want to give it
I
to
mean,
me so I
what
don't
do we
mess
got?
it up. So,
So there's 6 people in the office.
no.
We have 2 divisions. We have the administrative division in which the detective bureau is assigned. And then we have the operations division, which is the patrol division. There is a 1 commander and 11 officers assigned there. There are 2 detective positions that we use. And the reason that's assigned that way is there are 39 serious misdemeanors or felony cases always. That's typically the standard number. They're not all criminals from city of Edwardsville, so they have to go out and find them somewhere. They have to do interviews at the jail, write the affidavits, do a number of administrative work. And that's what it takes to clear up all of these cases and do all those kinds of things. What was happening so much in the past was that as soon as the patrol division was short-staffed for any reason, you could have a vacancy, you could have sick leave, training, vacation, you name it, whatever plagued it. The first thing that has to happen is the second detective then would be signed back to uniform patrol. And that was happening so often. There was a time we didn't even fill that second job. The problem with that is we have to use other resources. We don't send detectives to interview criminals by themselves, go to certain places to follow up with evidence, do all of these other things. We just don't normally do that. And it takes 2 of them to do some of those kinds of things. So that had to free up other bodies who are also assigned to other things. And that's kind of what's plagued us all the time. So we have a number of tasks that can be overwhelming. So what we want to stop right now, the best priority is we can take 1 person, we can add them to the patrol division, and then we can keep continuity and consistency in the detective division. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. And quite frankly, as every year we've come forward through the budget process to add people. It's just never made it this far because it's never been this desperate. We've been plugging and, like I say, cutting cardboard for quite a long time. So we were happy to have at least this momentum to get to this point where we can talk about, okay, we definitely need as a priority. There's not necessarily a great big piece of equipment or anything that's more priority than adding 1 person right now because our continuity left us. We don't have detectives today because they left. Right? One of them was said, well, man, this is the 3rd time I've been assigned to patrol. There's no routine to it. And he was an excellent detective. The other one said, well, in order to get more money, I had to promote up and then move to patrol and then decided to go to some security company to do private security. So those are the kinds of things we're fighting on a regular basis. In addition, you just take this week all by itself. This week at the police department, we have somebody that's, had some medical trouble and probably won't be with us for the next 3 weeks. Now, what do we do with that? Those are common things. People have babies. They have to have training. We have to send them. That's required by law. We try to do all kinds of things and be creative. However, that we're at the end of it. There's just simply no other way. We need some quality people that has some consistency and some continuity in our detective division. And the one way, the cheapest, the least expensive way to do that is to add 1 body that we can put in a uniform on patrol and then develop the other people that we have are probably qualified. In addition to, with some of our vacancies now, we need some seasoned people to replace those folks who have left. And thus, that's why we're advertising for some of these more senior officers to come in as laterals and maybe serve in that division, at least 1. So we're looking for 1 detective now. So in the end, I think it's just simple is we need 1 more body. We'll be able to keep our and maintain our minimum staffing levels. We don't deplete our patrol so much. There's continuity and consistency in the detective division. And I think this is the most economical way to do it.
So the K9, when it's working, if we're set for 4 officers, when he's working, that makes 5.
Well, no, because there's never 4. You have 12 and there's always somebody off, always on every shift. So the maximum number you're going to get is 9 in a day, 3 each shift, and there's 8-hour shifts. Okay. So if you have the K9 unit assigned, he works a split, somewhat of a power shift between those 2. And he also can be a supervisor because he's a master patrol officer. but he has such a specialty, he can't transport prisoners. There's some of these other things that we have to kind of work around with him. And he has training, as you well know, that he's very good at, and once again is passed once again with
Why can't he
flying colors.
transport a prisoner?
There's a dog inside the car. And
That was sarcastic.
he's friendly on Facebook.
Right.
Right?
That was a very sarcastic question.
It's
I'm
like,
sorry.
I don't want to be the first to try.
Right.
And he cannot be moved into that position because we're already paying him as a patrolman. He can't be assigned a patrol spot.
Patrol slot. Well, he's doing one now. Yeah, he could be assigned to a patrol slot as one of our, he's just better used, not on a set 10 to 6 a.m., for example, shift, or a 2 to 10. Maybe he's best in a power shift when there's more opportunities for the dog to be used and used properly, that sort of thing. And then, of course, we have some of those specialty events he may have to work, that sort of thing. So
Does
it's
he
just
still run calls and do
calls for
backup?
service, yeah, because as we previously discussed in this room and in other meetings, we don't send one person to any call for service. So he's definitely a second unit. Traffic stops, for example, he can make his own, he backs people up. So he's a policeman, he just has a specialty unit type tool, if you will, that he uses. We don't necessarily always put him on a one permanent shift because it just simply does not the best use of our resources. He needs to be a little bit flexible.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And Mike, could you remind me of the person that we hired to help with groundskeeping of the cemetery already, and then also of the public areas? Because we hired someone for that. How is that being?
So there was an individual in Public Works, right, had been with us in Public Works as a Public Works maintenance worker. So the cemetery and grounds worker is effectively in the same class, same job, basic duties, right? So he went from Public Works to Parks, as far as department full-time, to do parks maintenance, cemetery maintenance, ground maintenance. I mean, those are what he does, right? So ball fields, that area's got to be mowed and take care of the trails systems that are mowed, weed eated, all those kind of things. The cemetery, the areas that's not mowed by the contractor, just cleaning up there, whatever those types of things are. Some of the work that's around here, and unfortunately, pulled in so many different ways. We want to make sure we're doing high quality work, right? We want to make sure that cemetery, has been said lots of times, we'll make sure we have that, that looking the way it should look all the time. I think our trails and our parks is a great resource, and we want to make sure we take care of them. So some of the things we're talking about contracting are more to do with, ground maintenance that are consistent, so that person can be more focused on the extra stuff, right? Working in the say the flower beds, he's done a lot of work in the community center. If you've been over there, we put in new cabinets and shelving and things like that. So he and the Parks and Rec coordinator, they did all that work, right? They did that themselves. So it's things of that nature they focus on, or, you got to repaint stuff in the parks or whatever whatever those kind of things are. Now, when we did that, that was an additional person. So Public Works still has its full contingent of people.
Okay.
Right. Now, you've heard, and it's like a lot of places, right? And we had somebody come in and then they went somewhere else because they could make more money. I'm not sure you're ever going to solve that. You can't buy your way out of that problem. That's a problem. It's not going to go away, at least in the near future. But we have the staffing around Public Works and Parks now that we can work with. Not to say we won't ever need more, but if we can realign some of the contract work and keep our people focused, again, our Public Works people going out and doing those smaller projects, right? So it may be I say a smaller project. It may be a patch that's, like we've done on 110th Street or Kansas Avenue, where we, some of those, it's hard to contract them out because sometimes you just got to get out there and you start digging. We thought we were going to dig 8 inches. Now we got to go dig 18 inches. And the crew can do those kind of projects and get those done. They're not going to we're going to overlay 2 miles of road or a mile of road. That's just not what Public Works
needs to do here. Yep. They're going to be plowing roads in the winter, right? I mean, they're doing those types of things. So that's really around public work. And again, the part-time administrative person, I mean, it's one of those, I mean, it's been one where we, quite honestly, we could keep a full-time person busy, right? But I mean, again, utility billing, we send out 1,200 bills or so, 1,250. I mean, so that's all got to be processed, ran
Can you define part-time?
20 hours or less, 1,000 hours a year or less. Anything over 1,000 hours a year creates, they then have to go into capers.
Right.
So we would not exceed.
So you don't know 2 days a week, half day, you don't.
Probably would look at some kind of a set schedule. It may be like a 10 to 2, which helps cover the lunch hours, where right now, somebody's, if the office manager's out, that means either Zach or Sean are covering the front counter, or court clerk, she's on a week of vacation, right? I mean, we don't have any backup for that, right? I mean, we don't.
Part-time is much cheaper than a full-time.
Right. So in this case, I mean, they wouldn't have benefits in the sense of traditional medical, retirement. I mean, obviously they're covered under Social Security, Medicare.
I just wonder if it would have to be a locked in or a flexible. I mean, sometimes it wouldn't be 20 hours a week.
Yeah. I mean, I think we would plan around the 20 hours a week. Would it be 8 to noon or 10 to 2, or maybe it's 4 days a week for 6 hours? I mean, I don't know, but from a budget standpoint, we budgeted it at, I think 990 hours is typically how we budget part-time. Typically, we don't hit that. I mean, we do somewhat the same thing in the fire department, right? We have part-time medics that we use. Same thing, right? We have to manage. I mean, the downside is you have to manage them from that sense, because if you go over 1,000 hours, right, then they're immediately in whatever the retirement system is, and the city is responsible to back pay into the retirement system the employee and the employer share, right? So it doesn't go back on the employee to pick that up. It goes to the city. So you're kind of double. Now going forward, yes, then you start the normal split. But so we're very cautious of that 1,000-hour rule, which isn't exactly right. So in theory, part-time is 1,040, right? But we know we can't go over 1,000 hours. So that means, but I mean, my experience, part-time people, they too want to go on a vacation, or, school's out and they need to take a few days. They're just not getting compensated through vacation or something of that nature. So moving on to capital planning. Mainly what we're focused on here is some of our existing facilities and actions. And so these are ones, as you know, the community center, not just for rental use, like for, somebody coming and renting the facility, why that part, we've used it for, when we do the food distribution, or a number of our programs, summer programs, the school uses it for their lunch program. So it's used more like almost a park facility. I think that second picture, right, is some of the work we've recently done on the old cemetery and how do we get that cleaned up. So we've talked about putting money into these. The building needs to be repainted. The gutters are failing. If you could walk around to the back, right, and just typical things. And we have traditionally not invested into these. So what we're saying is we're going to commit $50,000 in this budget to maintenance and improvements of those public type facilities, right? These aren't new facilities. These are existing facilities. Again, some of the city park things that we have, we've done work down there on the bathroom facilities and for the concession stands, but we have, the buildings where we park equipment that need to be worked on. Again, communities, community center, the cemetery. I mean, there's, our CPPS board especially is interested, and I think it's a focus on what do we do with the old cemetery. We got it cleaned up recently, but you got to stay on top of it. If we just walk away, it'll be right back where it is. There's talk about fencing it so that's defined. So we don't necessarily say, well, we're going to spend this much money here, here, and here, but have kind of parked into the parks area, right? That all of this is under parks, this capital to do these kind of projects. And then the last, did I miss one there? I guess not. So, and we will get to debt. So what we're proposing at this point is a 1 mil reduction. As you can see, we have consistently lowered the mill since 2017. I think we should pat ourselves on the back. I understand all the stuff, but I don't think there's another entity, certainly in Wyandotte County, and I would bet you in most of our counties around us, that have reduced their mill levy by 11% or over 5 mills in this period of time. I mean, a lot of people kept them constant. They may have dropped it a little bit, but I think overall we've done a good job of trying to be more and more, looking at the stewards of the taxpayers' money and try to understand that yes, values go up and mills need to come down, and you try to find a place where that works. So what we're looking at right now for a propose, we expect this year, our estimates for revenues are coming in better. Obviously, when we did this August of 2020, we were kind of in the, kind of the middle of a pandemic. We didn't really know what was going to happen. We were pretty conservative. Now it looks like we are on track to about 6.4 million. But we don't want to assume just because we've had this uptick in 2021 that same kind of level is going to continue at that same climb. So as you can see, pretty conservative on the general fund funding, keeping it flat for the most part. $60,000 difference there, just under 70, I guess. So we're not assuming revenues are going to have a significant increase. Great if they do, but we tend to be pretty conservative on that side. And then on the expenditure side, we know that there's growth there. Again, you'll see we're going to spend down a little bit of our fund balance, but still keep it at that 15% level. Again, we're trying to put more money into those priority areas, such as the roads and improvements. So for the revenues, again, I think things are coming in better than we thought, especially around the sales tax area. We hope that'll continue to stay on that trend, but that's really the biggest increase. Gaming is coming back. We're still not where gaming revenue was, pre-pandemic. And I know a couple of y'all were here. Well, I'm going to say probably the mayor was the only one here when we first talked about the gaming revenue, and they kept telling us, "Oh, you're going to get $650,000 a year, $650 a year." And I think I told the mayor and the council then, $400,000 is what we should budget, and that's about where we've been ever since, right? So it'd be great if $650,000. I don't, it'd have to change a lot for us to get to that kind of level of income coming to us. So just a really quick snapshot. Fundamentally, you're looking at a 6% overall increase in the total general fund with all the things that we've talked about. Percentages are percentages. I mean, it always depends what the two numbers are. So it looks like Parks is growing a whole lot, but in real dollars, it's not growing that much. And so you see a big percentage there for Parks, but again, most of that's in that $50,000 of capital that we're reserving for, again, buildings and parks and cemeteries.
What percentage, Mike, was the revenue going up? In our
revenue was only about 1-2%. Is that what the revenue projection?
From budget to budget.
I'm going back. Yeah, I'll let Zach talk about. So the budget, it's up 400,000.
Well,
FY21 budget.
yeah. So the FY21 budget to budget on revenue does look to be about a 400 or between a $320,000 to $400,000 swing in increases that we did not budget in 2021 because we didn't really know how things were going to shake out. As it turns out, it looks like it's actually going to be a pretty significant year for revenues by the year end. So I'd have to look and see exactly what that percentage increase is, but it's, that 320,000 increase between where we thought we'd end up at the end of 2021 and where we think we're going to end up now at this point in the year. We think that's going to stay relatively flat, But that's why, if you kind of flatten out those 2 years, it's that level of increase in spending is kind of taking into account the increased revenue this year in those areas that Mr. Webb highlighted.
Quick math would be probably 7-8%.
Right.
Numbers in my head, right? I mean, 600,000 would be right at 10%. So it's 7, 8. And so again, just kind of breaking that over, overall 6% is what we're proposing. You can kind of see the breakdowns. A good portion of that is in the staffing, predominantly in the adjustments in pay, right? So that what we, 3% across the board, and then of course those 2 positions, the police and fire, where we have realignments to be competitive in the market. So
How much money was that for the adjustments in pay?
do you know what the dollar is on that one, Zach?
In total?
Yeah, for the salary adjustments, just the pay adjustments, the 3% and the adjustment. Okay. I want to let Zach go do that. I'll keep going. We'll come back to the questions here. Again, our target's always been in that 15 to 18% for fund balance. We're estimating right now that our fund balance in the year this year, about 1.1. We'll bring that down a little bit to just under $1 million. Our fund balance when we started this year, I think we anticipated a year-end fund balance, closer to a little under $1 million. I think it was 985,000. I think was what we budgeted in the current budget. I think it was right there, a little bit under $1 million. Looks like it's going to be, closer to 1.1. The other thing that, and it's critical to this discussion, predominantly about roads and really roads in the mill levy, right? So as I told you early on, one of the things we want to try to do, the mill levy related to debt service, try to hold that level, right? Because we know in the future, we're going to have some debt issuance for roads, right? The 98th streets, other potential roads, other projects. So instead of having it go down and come up, we're trying to provide a flat. The second area is we're taking money that was going into debt service and we're not putting it there anymore. So we have to make up those dollars, right? That 125,000. The good thing is the sewer fund, it kind of has 2 or 3 years where it picks up a little bit more of the debt. The sewer fund's 100% of its debt, right? So no longer, and we made this about 2 years ago, so no longer is the sewer expected to be paid for by tax dollars. So the general tax dollar that a resident pays doesn't pay for sewer debt.
And it should be self-funded.
Yeah, absolutely, 100% should be.
And you're saying this year it will be?
It has been and will be, absolutely. So, I mean, the amount of dollars is going from about 135 to 181,000. It's just the way the debt schedule works out, right? So there's a jump, but 100% funded out of the sewer fund. Sewer fund will be able to absorb that and move it forward. You have those numbers, Zach? And then I'll come back to this.
So real broadly, this accounts for changes in both payroll and benefits. We budget an increase in our health benefits to account for any increases that we're going to hit at the middle of the year. But it's about a 7% increase in that line item between budget 2021 and what's proposed in 2022. So around that $300,000 mark.
That would include benefits, cost changes, changing pay benefits and realigning.
And likely about half of that too is, as Mike mentioned, we'll have an additional police officer to make room for that detective position. And also the city planner is no longer getting paid out of the economic development fund and is now in the general fund. So whereas it's not technically a new position, it's just not being paid for out of the economic development fund. It's now being paid for out of the city's general fund. He's more of Bradley's been more of he's not a contracted employee like our previous city planner was. So it's more appropriate to pay him under those under those parameters. So that makes up about half of that percentage increase of just those two positions.
So in our debt service, as Zach's put together here, you kind of see, right, and we knew this was coming, right? We've talked about this before. So our principal is going down, it flattens out, then it goes down, and then it kind of runs flat out there for, over the next 10 years. Obviously, interest kind of follows that. We've been pretty fortunate that most of our debt that we have on the books, because of when it's been issued in the market. I mean, if you're investing, it's not necessarily good, but if you're borrowing, most of our debt probably 3% or less, right? So that helps us with that interest area. So we know that our principal and interest is going down, which again helps us that we don't have to move money from street fund, even though a lot of this debt is related to streets. So it's absolutely, you can do that, but we'd rather put that money on the streets and let debt be paid for out of the debt service tax, which is why it's set up that way, right? So when you issue debt, when we go out to bonds, you are in effect saying we're going to back those bonds with the full faith and credit of the city, being you will set a mill levy sufficient to cover that debt, right? And so over time, we've transitioned from, we'll move money out of special sales tax, and we'll move money out of the special highway funds, we'll move money out of, other places, when in reality, the debt service should be paid for with taxes with the exception of sewer, and sewer should, right? So we move money from sewer to the debt service fund to make that payment, but those are self-sufficient. Those two should really be self-supporting, self-sufficient. You're not really self-supporting with taxes, but that's what should be used to pay in this area. So what we're proposing as part of this budget is hold that mill levy at 10.4, right? So we still lower the overall mill by 1 mill, hold this one level. Again, moving money from the special highway fund so that $125,000 can go to, basically pavement on the streets, right? So instead of us sending it out for debt, we're using it there and letting the mill levy cover it. So I'll say this in summary, right? Going back to our summary, I mean, we're significantly increasing our money on roads. And again, by that, we're talking about road maintenance, big maintenance projects, right? So the overlays, the full depth patches, those kind of things. We're not talking about reconstructing roads, right? Where we're taking a road out, putting in all new curb and gutter and those kind of things. Those are really capital projects that are either funded through debt or debt in combination with federal funding that we've done 5 or 6 roads that way. We, again, as we've talked about our pay plan, one of the biggest things was basically to move that plan out to 13 steps. We're keeping that in there. We're doing the adjustments with the exception of those 2 positions, which I think we had talked about before. We knew that those were 2 positions that were really kind of out of the market, right? And we're not exactly on. I mean, if they're paying $22 in City A, we're not necessarily at 22. We might be at $21.90. We might be at $22.10, but we're in that, in that market because every pay plan is a little bit different. And so you're kind of looking at rates based on the same hours that a person work, right? So again, some cities use 7K exemption in their police, some do not. So when you start looking at it, but we try to move everything back to what would a person make in a standard 40-hour week with the exception of the fire, because so even their pay, we take the 40-hour and we readjust it. So the hourly rate's lower, but the overall pay is what it should be. Again, I think we've talked about the staff. We think that's reasonable, that 1.5 positions. We want to, again, use contract labor to help fill out some of these things so that the people we do have out there, we're using that resource, better. And quite honestly, it's a higher cost resource, right? So if I can hire a company to come mow these grounds here, that means I'm keeping somebody that we're probably invested in far more than that contract mowing company is going to invest, but we can get as good or better work. It takes management. I mean, the downside of contracting is it takes more management, but that's what we do. Again, hold the debt mill levy. And it's the 5th district. So, I think really, again, we heard a lot about roads. We're going to invest, 3 times more money in our roads specifically. So that's really the broad overview of this. So the next meeting we'll come back with more of the, all the departments as you've seen in the past, all the funds that we have to budget around, and we'll start moving towards setting a maximum budget and then a public hearing in late August. With an adoption, then we still have to do the R&R rate hearing at the same time. So happy to answer questions at this point. I know we don't have all of our council here, unfortunately. I know we had illness and timing problems. So
One of my beliefs has been for years that just because property values go up and appraisal values go up and potentially our revenue could increase doesn't mean we need to spend more.
Right.
And so I want to make sure that just because property values are going up, we're not spending at that same rate. So hopefully we can keep more money in the pockets of our people. One discussion we're going to have is the tax neutral rate. How does all of this budget line up with the tax neutral rate?
Sure. And we can do, I don't know that I have an answer on that, but you may have some more. I will say this. So our value was up by 9.6, 9.8. So just shy of 10. And so we're saying 7, right? So to your point is we're not trying to say, oh, it's up 9.8. Let's go spend 9.8 more. So we're actually below the rate of growth of value, which again, I think I showed you all in the past, when it comes to tax burden, which is different than mill levies and values, we've been the only city to reduce the tax burden. Not saying we didn't increase total tax income, but tax burden to the population. We've been the only ones to reduce the burden on taxes to our community.
So would the numbers that you're presenting here continue that in lowering our tax burden for the city taxes from last year to this year?
I believe that's correct. Yes. Yeah. That's at 9.8 down to 7 or where the mill levy, sets the tax at. Yes. So I don't know if you have an answer to that question.
Well, yeah, just a little bit more details on that R&R question. I know it's new and we're all still just kind of, figuring our way around it. So what the council has done already is set the public hearing date for August 23rd to consider exceeding the R&R rate. The maximum we could exceed it is our current mill levy of 43.2, around 43.2. So right now, what's proposed based on the metrics that we've got right now is once we would have that R&R hearing on August 23rd, at the meeting prior, the first meeting in August, we would recommend if all these metrics kind of stay the same, a maximum budget with that 42.2 mill levy. So it would be in excess of the R&R, but we've already done the step required to have that hearing to get input on that process.
How much would we be in excess of that neutral rate?
About 3 mills or so.
3 mills. So would that be around 204, 180?
Right.
Little, well, no, about 160, 170,000, around there. 180,000 is good, yeah.
What is it, a mill?
It's about 85,000 per mill. Right. Mm-hmm.
In this, if I'm reading it right or following correctly, we'd be spending, instead of about 125,000 on streets, 595,000 on streets.
Yes.
But aside from the capital improvements.
Aside from, so we would be spending up in that amount to around that $600,000 in street projects, increased from around $125,000 level that we've been doing. Like for instance this year, it would be an increase over that. And a lot of that is not bore by the general fund.
That's just maintenance.
In the general fund, what's in the general fund right now, as far as the streets is the increase from 40,000 in public maintenance road work to 50,000. But all of these projects are, like you said, they're not the major rebuild projects that we've got planned for 98th Street. They are, your overlays, your pothole patching, those kind of, seal coats, those kind of projects.
projects we haven't quite honestly been doing, right? So, I mean, we did a pretty extensive overlay in our curb and gutter neighborhoods, right? So we had money and we kind of focused on those. Most of those all got pretty much everything got overlaid. We've not hit our major thoroughfares, right? Again, everybody, 102nd, 98th, in 94th, Richland, Swartz, Riverview, we've not really hit those major roads that traditionally were the old county roads, right? So we focused first kind of on getting our neighborhoods, and now we're focusing on some of those major roads and putting with that, which we've not done in the past. That's where the seal coat comes in, right? So what we're trying to do with that is prolong that. So if you drive up Edwardsville Drive, so when we did that improvements on kind of Edwardsville Drive, that southern end there, we said, hey, we're going to mill the rest of that road and overlay it, right? So we milled it down to the concrete. And I'm almost certain I said in several council meetings, about 10 to 12 years from now, if we don't do things, we're going to see some of the problems we had before, the cracking in the roads and things drop off of the shoulders, because we didn't rebuild it. We just we gave it a facelift. And the critical part here, and as Dustin's really driven this home is, but if we can go out there on a 6-year cycle and put the seal coats or chip seals or whatever method out there, we can keep that pavement without replacing the pavement 24, 18 years, 20 years, 24 years. Where right now where we're at is we got a lot of roads that we're going to have to go in and tear out portions of them, full depth patching, and then come back and overlay those. So, it just gets several $100,000 per lane mile to do that versus, the seal coat is, we're doing 6 lane miles for 125,000 or whatever, 4 to 6, so you're getting you're lengthening the life of that pavement. But if you don't have something good to start with, right? I mean, I think the analogy was the house. I mean, if you don't first power wash it and caulk it and clean it up and all that, just throw paint on it, you'll come back in a few years and go, why is it all peeling and falling off? You got to prep it first.
So I guess,
Yeah.
So how did we, because I've been here for 6 years,
Right.
How did we get to this point that it's now become a crisis that we have to now issue this much money? Whose responsibility or who is overseeing that in the past 6 years to say, hey, we need to be increasing our road maintenance program because every year we're deteriorating further and further and further and further until it's finally become to this head that we feel like we have to throw a bunch of money. Now, I'm not saying that it's a bunch of money. It is $600,000, whatever. It is a lot of money. But I'm saying it would have been, I would have liked to have seen this ramp up, or I'm not sure how we got to that point. Was it that's my question. Just how come it got to this point?
Well, I think it was a combination of things. This is my opinion. So, of course, through 2008 through 2012, and I know that's right. You had
I'm going to say 2008.
Right, but you had a 40%.
Last 6 years that I've been here.
Yeah. Well, because you were still making up for. You had a 40% reduction in property values that you. It wasn't until 2017.
The mill, like you just said, every year since.
Right.
For the last 6 years.
Right.
So, I would have been happier to, I don't know what that mill reduction rate was at the time that we did it in 2016, but said, if you keep the mill levy at this level, we could put X amount of dollars towards road improvements.
Right.
Whether it was 20,000, 15,000, 180,000, I don't know what that number is. And then next year, and I think folks in our city would have liked to have seen that, hey, just hold the mill levy level instead of reducing it, but we're getting our streets repaired. Because there had been additional money put in there versus the reduction. And I don't know what that amount was from the last 6 years. I think you were saying, where Zach's right there, 5 mills at you know, if you take that 5 mil, that's quite a bit more money to our street repair maintenance program over the last 6 years.
I mean, 600,000 overall, that's probably close to what we should be putting into our maintenance anyway.
No.
So, I mean, I think they've done a good job here getting I mean, I don't think we're in a crisis. I mean, we got some bad roads, but when you see these full depth patches go down and get some seals going on, I really think we will see vast improvement. So I think there have been things being done, not to say we couldn't improve.
I respect what you're saying, but, and you've been here a short time. And I don't know if you drove down 98th Street south of Kansas Avenue every day for the last, I don't know, I'm gonna say 20 years. Because I would say 98th Street is in a crisis. And so would everybody that lives on that street. 102nd Street is terrible. So I'm glad we're addressing things. I'm not saying, I'm just saying I would have liked to have seen more money thrown at it incrementally throughout the last 6 years that I've been here versus, hey, now all of a sudden we're going from 125,000 to 600. You know, that's all. That's all I'm saying.
How far will 600,000 get us? There are a lot of spots, I think, and I'm no professional on this, but that we'll need the full depth repair before we seal over. Will that get us quite a ways on some of these 98th
Like
Street,
102nd
102nd Street?
I think just ballpark, we're looking at the major repairs costing around 250,000, I believe. Maybe a little more depending on how much we do.
Okay.
That's kind of what we're looking at.
Does that include the seal over the top?
No, that would just be the full depth patch repairs. But once those patches are down, it's going to be a smooth road. The surface coat, the lift that we'll put on later in our future planning, will just kind of tie it all together and protect those patches and things. So that's why I say I think for that amount of money going forward here in the future, the next 3 years, we can really see this road system just kind of flip over here if we can keep it up with the ceiling and stuff.
It's good to hear.
And kind of on that point too, just to get a little more context, and some of these are moving figures and we decide what's going to come out of what fund when the project's actually, you know, out and going. But, and Dusty, I know has got, you know, I don't know if he's got the detail with him, but this is all in addition to the maintenance plan, the 6-year rotation that was already presented. So 102nd Street is on deck for that project that Dusty just mentioned. That's not in, that's in addition to the seal projects that we've got identified for Kansas Avenue, Edwardsville Drive, 100th Street, and 2nd Street in going on next year. So we're kind of, it's a broad, you know, we got, like to your point, we've got a lot of roads that need a lot of attention. Some need different levels of attention than others. And to the city manager's point earlier, you know, some of these surface seals that we're doing prevents it from becoming there. It's you know, now we got to do, you know, some $1 million project. That $600,000 to Dusty's point is likely what the street maintenance budget should be, and that's, we're kind of writing it with this budget.
I think it says, it goes back to just what Mike was saying earlier, that you said 10 years ago. 10 years from now, we're going to have to be doing maintenance. So this, we can't go throw all of our attention now to street repairs and forget about our maintenance. And that's exactly right, because then those roads fall in disrepair. So, I mean, I think that I'm not saying that we're not on the right track now. I'm just saying I would have liked to have seen it a little slower, or, you know, get to that spot. But you're absolutely right. We do have to. I mean, we just did 100th Street. I don't know. It seems like yesterday, but it's probably 5 years ago, 2 years ago, whatever it was. But we need to make sure that it stays in good, so it doesn't fall in disrepair. And we're up there doing that same thing again.
And to your point about, you know, going back and looking at, you know, the different priorities and the different budgets, after we were coming out of the recession, that's when appraisals really started jumping up to really considerable degrees. So there was a big priority to lessen that tax burden, not just to get more money and spend more money because valuations went up. We wanted to keep that as stable as, you know, as was responsible, considering everything else that needed to go on, and which kind of led to those mill levy decreases to help get that tax burden on the residents at a more even keel than what valuations were showing. So I think that, and no, I mean, we can go back and talk about different priorities and different budgets, but I think broadly speaking, over those last 5-6 years, that's one factor to, why we had certain priorities in certain times.
Okay, well, like I said, we'll have, I mean, if there's other, or if as you think about this, again, not having the other two here, I think would help in that discussion. So, we'll continue as I think as we've done in the past, we want to make sure we keep this on the plate and keep moving it forward. And again, I think every year we have tried to be, and maybe we've been too much so, but try to be frugal and responsible with those taxpayer dollars, right? And understand, I mean, I think we all understand there's been a lot of, push around taxation, that's why the state legislatures, has jumped in and done some things that not necessarily, I'm not sure it resulted in much help. We've had loss of funding from places where we used to get funding, which helped with some of these types of things, right? So I think it's a combination of items. Even what we're doing here, some of that's bond. I mean, right? It's bonded dollars that we said we're going to put out there. Well, we can use $200,000 a year for the next 3 or 4 years out of that bond program, but then that money's going to not be there. And from a forward-looking thing, I think we have to also grow into that, right? So as values come on to the tax rolls, a lot of those out of the IRBs, we need to continue to be allocating more of our tax dollars to roads, or we have to come back and say, well, we're going to go issue more debt for roads, which still is taxes. Sometimes you can issue debt and do one big project. But if you're going to stay with 200,000, 300,000, probably should be a tax supported function versus a debt supported function, right? Because you don't want to tie your debt capacity up with a lot of smaller projects. So, but I think part of the thing is, I mean, we were trying to use other things to help supplement our debt a little bit there for a while. And some of that is old decision making. I'm responsible for today and yesterday, and so I'll take the responsibilities. But sometimes you make decisions a while back and they keep with you for a while, and so we have to be cautious of that as well. So totally understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Zach. Mike, you're next. City manager report.
The only thing I'm going to add to the city manager's report, but I will be on vacation from Wednesday through the following Wednesday. I'll be out of town. I'm not sure I'm ever out of touch. So in my absence, Zach will be here, and I'm sure he can take care of anything that comes up, and or any of our department heads. They do a great job. But obviously, if something needs my attention, I know Zach will make sure I'm aware of it. Otherwise, I think I posted the items on the report, and we can answer questions.
Thank you, Mike. Zach, you got something?
I do just have a quick plug. I believe it's in the departmental reports, but the community cookout we've got going on at the park is going to be going on this Thursday. So if you've not signed up, if you know somebody wants to sign up, the deadline to do that is tomorrow at midnight. So that's, we're trying to do these kind of quarterly community type get-togethers, and there's details about that on our website and social media. So if you've got any questions, or if anybody has any questions, feel free to point them in my direction.
What's the date on that?
The 29th, so this Thursday.
One thing, and I, so the big boy steam frame will be here 2 weeks from tonight. We had a meeting with the UP, so it's supposed to arrive at 5:15 and be here for 20 to 30 minutes. So I
Sure,
think,
Mike. Yep, because there's going to be folks that are going to be attending, I think, they want to hear.
So the big boy steam engine train is to be here August, I think that's August the 9th, from 5:15 to 5:45. But of course, the schedule of that thing can fluctuate. So I would anticipate between 5 and 6, we will have 4th Street tied up and closed. We've met with them. They expect somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 people to be in attendance when it stops. Now, there may be people down along the tracks and other areas. They are sending us a special agent. So as we used to say in Texas, one riot, one ranger. So I guess one steam train, one special agent. So our folks will be out there working hard to try to make that as safe as possible. We certainly are going to try to encourage people to maybe park down here at City Hall and walk up there, looking at other options. But I think our fear is just you get 2,500 people, say that's 1,500 cars. Where are you going to put 1,500 cars? And we don't necessarily want to park up and down 4th Street and then neighborhoods. And so staff was kind of working on best possible plans, but I think that, I would anticipate from anywhere from 4 on through 6 will be difficult, and we encourage people. Basically, I don't think 4th Street will be open during that time, going north and south. Obviously, we'll reposition emergency vehicles and things of that nature, but just typical public trying to get home, to and from home, getting to the council meeting, we may need to push that one back 30 minutes. So
But you're saying push the timing back?
Push our city council meeting back.
Because we can't come in on 9th Street?
Oh, you can. I'm just saying, I don't know if people want to go to see the train. I don't know what the traffic's going to be. That's all I'm saying. The UP has offered, if the council on the following day wants to go to Union Station and do kind of a VIP tour where they actually take you through the train and things. They do that on the afternoon of the 10th. If you let me know, we can finalize a time, fix that. But if that's of interest, if you want to see the steam train more up close, they don't let people get on it and touch it, or so to speak, while it's stopped, because it's still active. It's an active railroad. So just want to let y'all know that. So we think it'll be a lot of people, a lot of cars, a lot of stuff. Their position was everywhere they go, it's like that. It just, you can't really control it. But I think we'll do our part. August 9th could be very hot, right? So we'll do all the things we can to make it a safe environment here in Edwardsville so people can enjoy it and see the train and participate.
Are we going to make a Facebook event or anything to promote that in the city?
Yeah, we'll use social media, et cetera, to do that. I think we want to look to see, are there parking options? There's not a lot of, a lot of options. From my standpoint, fearful of people parking and running across K32 or, things of that nature, parking along the sides of roads. But I don't know how much we can control it.
It might be worth reaching out to the church just to let them know to
That's what
expect
we're gonna do,
parking,
yes.
and then watch K32 in case we need assistance. Is there a button people can
Yes.
push for pedestrian
Yeah,
crossing
there's a
there?
pedestrian crossing.
Okay. Also, it might be a good opportunity to reach out to the couple of businesses we have in Edwardsville, like Roscoe's or 4th Street Cafe, and say, hey, there's a big event. We're going to have a lot of people. It would be a great time to plug some of our businesses when we have so many people coming through.
Yeah. I just wanted to add that to the list. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
There's a website or something too that you can track the location.
Yeah, they have an app that you can download to your phone, and you can see where the train is at all times and follow it around. I don't know. I probably could go to the Union Pacific, or isn't it called what's the train called?
Big boy.
The Big Boy. So I think you could probably type in Big Boy and find the app if you want to know where it's at, et cetera. So, but it should be here around 20 or 30 minutes in length before it then goes on to Union Station that evening.
Time for council comments, and start with you, Carolyn.
Okay. One concern that I had noticed recently was in caring for the cemetery, grass being left along the headstones. Would that be under the White Lawn and Landscape crew, or is that something that our employee would care for?
So that's a duty. It's not White Lawn Landscape. It's Supreme Green now is our contractor, and
Oh,
that
I
is
didn't know we switched. I'm sorry.
that is a contracted duty that they need to be doing, and that has been communicated with them. And we'll kind of have a quality control check as they do their mows this week, and then we'll report back to the CPPS board as far as their performance to see if we need to.
I
you know,
appreciate
look at
But
taking it.
since we're on this subject, why did it happen to begin with?
I think they just did not, they didn't
So
finish
are
their
we-
job.
So did we pay them for that service?
We've not paid them for this most recent level of last couple of weeks now.
And it, I don't think this is a one-off.
No, I think you're right. That's
it's
fine.
been occurring.
Mhm.
And I mean, I don't know what their contract says, but if they're not able to.
Their contract says they need to blow off
No,
and
I'm saying if their contract, if they're not able to perform the duties that we set forth in the four corners of the contract to our city attorney,
Mhm.
then maybe we need to be looking elsewhere.
and there's cancellation clauses in that contract, and that's why we want to, we made them aware this is something that needs to be corrected, and if it's not, and we're going to be monitoring it, and if it's not corrected, then we might be coming with the CPPS board to make a change.
Because I think we all here are, I mean, we need to hear about those issues, but let's get to the point where the cemetery is running smoothly, and we have to quit hearing about it, the problems. And I mean, I know that sometimes is bigger, but I mean, we hire people to take care of that. And
Right.
And the quality control, maybe somebody needed to check on it and follow up to make sure that had occurred, and addressed it 2 months ago. Not today.
So that's fine. That's something that then one of our crew will go check.
So the
Consistently.
Supreme Green, when they come out for their next mow, will do it. They've been told that you will do it, and then they will continue to do it, or we will maybe in the market for or we'll bring up the CPS for as far as what our options would be at that time.
Could we just plan on having somebody go after they're done then?
I'm going to be going after they're done
That's
to check
perfect.
on that. Yeah.
Thank
Mhm.
you, Zach.
Mhm.
I appreciate that. It looks like we've had some repairs up 102nd Street. Is that correct? I mean, it seems like there have been quite a few.
You could thank a local property owner for that, actually. So, and we've expressed our gratitude for what they did up there too. That owns a business up that way.
Okay.
So, but yeah, we greatly appreciate it. But that section is on that list of full depth repairs as well. So.
Oh
as they've
gosh,
seen,
that's
it's a bad
great.
spot.
I noticed it and I appreciate it. So if you'll let them know, thank you. That's fantastic.
They can't be recognized, so that, or did they ask? to
It
not
was
be?
Mr. Anderson's business,
Anderson's.
Winifred Anderson, right?
Nice. And he has done so.
Wow.
So I know he gets a lot of the blame for that damage, and I think that's
Yeah.
why he feels obligated, but it should be appreciated too, because that's kind of above and beyond to be able to do that, I think. I think he's, like you said, he's done that in the past too, so. But
Maybe
hopefully
we could
can get
even
that
do it.
fixed up to where we won't have those troubles.
Since he does get a lot of the criticism on that for the big trucks, maybe we could do a Facebook post since it's a local business and just say, hey, thanks for the support from our community business and reach out that way. The surface seal project, I believe we had to vote on redoing the markings on that street, but it's been put off again. Is that accurate?
Yeah, weather was pushing back our contractor and other jobs that they were working on. As of now, it looks like Thursday, we should be rolling on it.
Okay. Has that given us time to get more accurate bids on what that striping and lane marking will cost?
We've already contracted with one, so I haven't really been pursuing that.
What was the total on that?
It's 32, something like that,
32.
32,000.
3,000 less than.
Okay. Last thing on my list is I just wanted to encourage not only the council, but any community members. It's a great time to email anyone you know on the UG, but especially our commissioners and the mayor who represents us as well for the county. They're having a budget hearing, public hearing coming up this week, I believe, for how they're going to allocate the ARPA funds coming in from the federal government. And I just think it would be a great opportunity to remind them that we are part of the county as well, and some of that money should be headed to Edwardsville. That's all I have.
Just to follow up, so the UG collectively.
Your microphone.
Or
Sorry. Christina, the podium is louder.
So collectively, I think the UG is getting around $80 million. And about 30 million of that is allocated to the county and 50 million to the city side. So they're right there. It's based on counties get a certain amount, every county gets a certain amount, and then cities get certain amounts depending on a couple of variables. So the part that I think Ms. KR is referring to is, so they're talking about how they're going to, they're talking about both, but the issue is how is it getting allocated for the county portion of those funds?
That's correct.
Chuck, we're gonna go with you. Margaret, you're gonna be last.
Hey, on the police department recommendation or the study that says that we are understaffed, what study, who was that did that?
Chief, you want to address, I mean, there's a number of,
Well, I mean, the one that we did.
well, there's like 4 or 5 different models that we use,
I did them all.
Yeah.
I mean,
but it's based
which
on,
companies or-
well,
No, we didn't hire.
we didn't hire it out, but you have the International Association.
In-house that said we're understaffed.
We're using models by the International Association of Police Chiefs, the International City Management Association, the police officer. I mean, there's several different national models out there that use. Again, I think we've said this, while the model may somewhat show that, we've never asked for that or think that that's probably the right number.
Well,
We think it's less, but it's not a per population number. I mean, it's not based on population alone.
calls for service.
Calls for service, types of crimes, some of the other matrices better than me.
It's a lot of math. I think Mrs. Cahar can attest to that. It's a lot. There are so many ways to go about it. There are some computer programs you can buy, but it comes right down to it is based on calls for service, time committed, a number of other categories that go in, and you just work the math compared to that. And like one of the details that we put in, and this isn't the first year. This has been going on for 14 years. We do this every year as part of our review, as part of our policy for that we have adequate staffing and that staffing is being used in the most efficient, effective way. And that's where it all comes from. So it's done every year. It's not just done willy-nilly and just for this presentation. It's pretty extensive. There's a number of there's a number of ways we can do that. But one of the most effective ways that we can certainly do that is just to look at our schedule, and everything that's in our schedule has formulas tied to it. And that kind of tells you how many times one person is scheduled, how many times 2 people, how many times 3 people. And then the rarity of a special event or something, there's a 4th person or something to that effect. So that tells us what our availability rate, what our open vacancy rate is mathematically. And in the end, there are 3 of those different studies that come out to you need 15 people on patrol. There's a very more elaborate assessment that can be done and has been done that says you need to hire 10 more people. And it's just not practical, that you need 18 people on patrol. And of course, we have that 17, 18 number now. So you need to add 10 more people. Well, what does that cost? About $700,000. It's just not practical. But it does take into account those things, like time of dedication to service calls, the number of officers assigned to the call. And remember, we don't send one officer to any call. First, every officer goes to every call, just out of safety and precaution. And that's the right way to do business safely. So there's a number of factors that go into all of that. But in the end, if you just look at our schedule, you take all the math from the schedule, it says we need 14.72, I think is the number. You can't have a 0.72, right? In people, so it rounds up to 15. And that's a very consistent number. We're asking for 1. And that's because we can do more with the 1 right now. It makes economic sense. So
This position that says Assistant Chief Captain Jeff Short will assume the role of Operations Commander. What is it? What's changed there and what does that mean?
He is taking over the patrol division. Remember what I said earlier? We talked about there's 2 divisions in the organization. He's been over the administrative division, and with the retirement of Doug Hermrich, we're able to put both of the individuals who had served in detectives into the 2 top commander spots, and they're able to swap back and forth. That wasn't the case in previous, no offense to Mr. Hermrich at all. It's just he had never come up through the detective division, and that had been a priority for us. Again, we would have some pretty elite commander material in the future, part of our succession plan. However, once again, they don't work here anymore. So we got to start from scratch a little bit. But both those guys do terrific work, quality people with the district attorney's office. So right now, for example, Jeff Short's dedication to the city of Edwardsville Police Department, he worked a 16-hour day. That's why he's not here today. So he's a workhorse. He's just transferring over to get some experience on the patrol side and letting Brad Todd, who was recently promoted to lieutenant, to work the administrative side.
I'm glad to see that we're addressing the streets.
Thank you.
And also the cemetery. And I look forward to hearing back from Mr. Davis and after you guys have a conversation about the storm sewer issue going down 110th Street. Appreciate you being here and voicing your concern. That's all I have.
Thank you. Margaret, your turn.
So I will echo about the cemetery. I did speak to a few residents about the cemetery, the upkeep, what needs to be done, what's not getting done. Zach and I had a good conversation. Friday, I think our company we work with is a good company, the mowing company. A good practice would be somebody going there and checking on them, which always been a good practice. And we talked about, I brought it up a couple meetings ago, if we need stuff done, the brush or the fence lines cleaned up instead of, I know we have our different times a year. The summertime is extremely busy time. Instead of hiring a part-time, hire that job out. Even if our mowing company can't do it. There's several different, instead of it sitting there for a few months when things slow down and get it done. So the cemetery is, both cemeteries should be top of the list. Granted, we can't control the weather. We know there was a few things regarding the weather, but quality control probably, they need to know they're on alert.
Right.
Bottom line, so.
And then they are, and to your point about, just kind of ongoing other maintenance, that reliance on the contracted work will allow our ground staff to go out there and remove volunteer trees from the fence line and do those kind of regular maintenance and upkeep type items if they don't have to mow that south portion of the cemetery, or if they don't have to spend a day and a half mowing here and down by the riverfront park or something like that. So.
And I'll add this too. I don't get to the cemetery that much. I live right by there. I appreciate people coming to us. And I know you do too, Zach. You've got plenty on your plate. We don't know it unless we're told or if we go there every day. So.
Right. Yeah. No, yeah. For anybody listening, I do appreciate people being our eyes and ears out there because we can't be everywhere, and it's more helpful than it is not more often than not.
Absolutely. Got a couple of things. I had a question on the fire department general or the revenue expenditure. So do we have volunteers? Did we have a volunteer? Did I miss that? It was $45.
Oh, yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, our matrix is still full-time, part-time, and volunteer firefighters. Most of our volunteers are college interns or college students from Johnson County Community College or Kansas City, Kansas Community College. They're fire science students. A lot of our volunteers also have, in lieu of a small reimbursement or stipend, just say we want the experience so they don't bill it back for us. And in some of the others, we have a pay matrix. They get a certain amount per call, a certain amount per run.
Okay.
And
It
from
was
there.
45. I thought, what is that?
That was
We
just
don't
one of the new
budget for it.
volunteers that has come on that has got on the stipend.
And those aren't paid think they're paid
Correct.
quarterly.
They're paid out quarterly.
Yeah, so that you
So
don't
what
see.
is,
it's a
and what
quarterly.
is the repairs, the non-vehicle repair? What was that? That looked like a,
Can you help direct me and just pay?
it was a pretty large repair. I'm not sure. It's on the general fund fire department, about 3/4 of the way down. Repairs, non-vehicles.
You're on the general fund for the fire department, you said?
Yeah,
Correct.
She's on the revenue expenditure report.
That's not that's six, they're talking about the $6,620.
Yes.
That's representing the whole year, so that's not a single purchase. I can
It's
provide
just a
that.
really vague category. So if there's
Sure.
several things, then
Repair non-vehicles usually incorporate SCBA or breathing apparatus repairs, chainsaws, saws, those type of units, the power equipment that we use for rescues, the jaws of life, those type of items. Those type of repairs are listed as a non-vehicle repair. And that's why that line item is there
Okay.
for. Just like the annual testing is another line item that doesn't get filled until about August, but that's our ladder testing. And
just being that much off, I thought maybe I better ask.
Nope, we just, a lot of it for this year has been that air compressor on the trailer.
Gotcha.
And that's been that one.
Okay. That makes, thank you.
Just generally saying under our code. So vehicle repairs are generally things that have a tag on them, right? They're moving.
Right.
Stock and non-vehicle repairs
That makes
could
sense.
be equipment or things like that. And then building and grounds. And sometimes they go kind of, buildings and grounds generally is going to be anything from air conditioner getting fixed to, it may be in the wastewater, it may be pulling a pump out of a wet well. So it kind of captures a lot of areas.
Okay.
Broadly.
Chief Mathis, this is your night. So I've never asked this before and I don't know how it works. So you're here at every meeting, most
Yep.
meeting.
Mhm.
And then there is another officer here.
Yeah, that's the sergeant at arms, if you will, our
Do
protector.
we have to have that?
We better. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. It's a security plan.
Well, tonight it's just you.
Well,
and
it's
it's
me.
working. I'm just
I come with
asking.
a smile to do it. So,
Right, absolutely.
well, it's just
A
a
way
matter
to
of
save
like
money.
I
It's-
said, well, I mean, Jeff Short is an exempt employee who's usually here. That's for continuity as well, right? So he's informed of what's going on at this
So
level.
if he's here, it's
And-
not extra money.
No, he's an exempt employee.
Okay.
So, and that for him and I, these days are fairly long because we started early and
Correct.
we end late, just as you're doing. But he started really, really early this morning for other
Okay.
projects. So we sent him home and I said I'd take care of it. He needs to sleep because he got to come back early in the morning tomorrow.
I appreciate
So
that.
there's usually somebody here. In fact, you may have seen an assembly of folks coming in maybe last meeting.
Right.
There's a brand new guy and they're just showing where it's at, where you would sit if it's your turn kind of thing. So we have this, we do this for court. We do this for the safety of, it's in our safety plan. This
Right.
started some time ago. If you recall, we installed the security glass door that's out here. Was a part of the open carry and concealed carry, all of that legislation several
Right.
years ago that you had to designate certain buildings. And that's why the council should come through here because you have kind of a carte blanche pass that you don't have to go through the security part. But anybody else visiting, if we don't know you, have to come through and be screened. So that's part of that. That comes from legislative history there.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
You bet.
Thank you.
No worries.
The big boys, so if and when, I know you're gonna put information out there, but probably if you could, wherever the city wants these people to park, that needs to be, please park here, to give them some kind of guidance. It sounds like it's gonna be a little,
They didn't recommend, I'm sorry, Mike, but they didn't recommend that from the Union Pacific Railroad. Their strategy is a little loose. And so
they're leaving it up to the city. it
well,
sounds
what they
like.
found is, and they do a number of these, that's why they can estimate there's going to be 2,500 people here. But in speaking with their agent, one of the comments he made is we have tried to coordinate with locals saying park here, don't park here, and do some of those things. But they flock. What happens is they just submerge upon the train as soon as it stops, and it's hard to control. So we're going to try to control what pieces that we can. But it's going to be difficult. What we need to do is, like someone said, let's talk with the church. Let's talk with the business owners, the post office. Let's do what we can and maybe control some of the traffic flow that makes way for the pedestrians, because that's what we need to be safe. They don't necessarily get to touch the train, but they sure get to get close. It's the only time they really say you can trespass on railroad property. And they won't be just right where it's happening. They're going to be spread down the next 2 stops. When they came through in 2019, we probably had that many people, but they were spread out. They were over all these. So we expect that probably a mob-ish, if you will, of people.
That was middle of the day too.
Yeah. Now it's going to be, we do have that business traffic, that residential traffic we have to deal with, but I think more it's a pedestrian thing. So just in answer to our plans, they didn't suggest that we put up a bunch of signs, say park here, don't park here, that sort of thing, and just kind of let it happen. However, we're going to do what we can.
Thank you for staying up there. This is your night, Mark.
Okay, I'm here.
Chief Mathis. So situations like this, perfect example. Could we ask the sheriff's department to come and help?
We could. They even suggested that as part of their
all of our extra activities.
Yeah, we'll
to save money.
That was a check mark I made from the meeting this morning, is that, hey, if we could get maybe 1 or 2 of their units to come down and just be available. What we need is more of the safety, just reminders, hey, stay back kind of thing, and don't crawl on the railroad tracks because there's a train coming.
Right. Do we utilize the sheriff's department?
Well, we try to, as soon, if they're available, their availability to us, in all honesty, is minimal. It truly is. And
something like this, maybe ahead of time.
This is a good event where we can say, hey, we know the date, we know the time. Can you send your guys down? And do what you can. So
we don't want to take our patrol off our street. So
well, we're gonna have to use extra people anyway. There's no way we can cover the whole thing. But just depending on how the traffic flows on K32, no pedestrian traffic will, if it's enough volume, the button is not enough. That's a lot of lanes to go through. It's pretty quick. So we'll probably have somebody out there as well, but then monitoring some of the other, the gates, the gates at the other intersections, just because we know what happened last time. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
And very excited about the roads in our budget too, as I think everybody is. And Dusty, you probably are going to be following that pacer scale. Obviously, in your plan, you presented to us a couple weeks back, a couple meetings back, but maybe once a month, maybe if Dusty could give just a short update. Hey, this is what's been done. I know you have it in your reports, but maybe to talk about it a little bit for those that want to hear it. So
sure, yeah, and we kind of did the written report to help keep the meeting moving,
correct,
but also understand. I think over the
he's got to be.
I think a lot's going to happen over the and it's kind of how roads do anyways, right?
Correct.
It's this time of year when you see lots of things. So I think you're going to see the seal coat happening and striping happening,
which is exciting.
And 110th Street work. Right now you look up there and mostly what you see is nothing, right? They've taken out the old road, but you don't see. They put all the stormwater been put in up there, right? Underground utilities have been put in. The water lines are being put in. So as most road projects go, it kind of sits there and people go, nothing's happening. There's a lot, you just don't see it. And then all of a sudden, forms are being set, things are happening, and then it happens pretty quick. And then again, we've been working, and I think, again, we don't have an endless amount of money. So partly is we're trying, we're focused on 102nd Street. That's our project for this year. There's parts of 102nd Street that need a lot of work, and there's parts of it that are okay, right? Again, we're not trying to widen the streets. We're not trying to do it, but just the surface, the rideability, that kind of safety piece. And there's areas, it's going to take full depth repairs, new base, new asphalt, and other areas where, we can leave it until we then come back maybe and do an overlay from top to bottom. So that's the kind of thing Dusty's been doing,
right?
A great job of
absolutely,
making sure we're spending our money wisely too,
correct,
and not just, hey, we'll go throw some asphalt here, some asphalt here, some asphalt here. And again, the long term is fix these foundational problems, put new surface on them, and maintain the surfaces so we can say, I remember I got asked one time, well, why crack seal? I think, somebody was asking about crack sealing Kansas Avenue when it was a couple of years old. Well, that's when you want to do it, because the sooner you seal those cracks, the less impact you'll have. And, when we were talking earlier about, the truck traffic, I mean, y'all remember 102nd and Kansas Avenue, that corner right there was a mess. And he used to bring asphalt down there all the time. And I mean, it's horrible, because there was nothing under the road. He's driving the same trucks down that road that were driven down there for 20 years. And that portion of the road, right, is holding up. It's going to get wear and tear. We know that. But I mean, that's a solid road. We put a seal coat on it. We get another 6 years. Put a seal coat on it. And we're not spending, you're spending, 50,000 a mile instead of 200,000 a mile. That's the long-term goal, is to get us in that cycle. And I think
If there's some big updates, Dusty, I think it should be very, very quick update.
thank you.
Thank you. Zach, thank you for the budget, putting that together. No, that's a lot of hard work. And thank you, Mr. Anderson, for his updates, repairs on 102nd. That's all I have.
The only thing I have to do, comments I need to make is obviously is to Mike and Zach and the department heads. I know that includes all of you that are here tonight, and how you prepare us for a good budget. And I do appreciate it very much. And with that, we are adjourned.